I still remember the exact moment my life stopped feeling like home. It wasn't when I left. It wasn't when the door closed behind me. It was the silence after that. Because nobody called my name. Not my mother, not my father, not even my brother who used to share everything with me as a child. It was like I had been erased from their world without leaving a single trace behind. And the worst part? The world kept moving like nothing happened. But I didn't. I was still standing there in that moment, trying to understand how a family can turn into strangers in less than a minute. That day started like a normal argument. I didn't even think it would change my entire life. My father was sitting at the table, reading like he always did when he didn't want to talk. My mother was in the kitchen, pretending to be busy. And my brother, he was on his phone, smiling at something I couldn't see. I remember I said something simple, something honest, something I thought they would understand. But honesty is dangerous in families that only accept obedience. My father slowly lowered his newspaper, not angry at first, just disappointed. That kind of disappointment that feels heavier than shouting. My mother finally turned around, and my brother stopped smiling. That's when I knew I had stepped into something I couldn't reverse. My father said one sentence, calm, sharp, final. If you walk out of this house, don't come back. I laughed at first, not because it was funny, but because I thought it was impossible. No parent says something like that and means it. But then I looked at his face, and I realized he wasn't warning me. He was deciding. And the silence that followed was the loudest thing I ever heard in my life. I waited for someone to stop me, for my mother to say my name, for my brother to stand up, for anything human. But nobody moved. So I did. I picked up my bag, and I walked out. One step, then another, until the door closed behind me. And that sound still lives somewhere inside me. At first, I told myself they would call, that maybe an hour would pass and someone would regret it. Then a day, then a week. But the phone stayed quiet. And that silence slowly started to change me. Because when your own family stops reaching for you, you start questioning your own existence. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes, then every hour. Then I stopped checking at all. Days turned into weeks, weeks turned into months. And slowly, painfully, I realized something I never wanted to accept. They weren't waiting for me to come back. They were moving on without me. My brother's photos started appearing online. Family dinners, celebrations, smiles I used to be part of. But now I was not even mentioned, not even erased dramatically, just absent, like I never existed in those moments at all. At night, I used to lie awake staring at the ceiling, asking myself one question over and over. Was I that easy to replace? Or was I never really needed? And the hardest part is not the answer. It's the silence you get instead of one. Because silence forces you to create your own truth. And mine slowly became this. If I was unwanted there, then I would build a life where I didn't need them at all. The first months outside were not dramatic. No big struggle montage, no sudden success. Just reality. Cold, repetitive reality. Small room, small job, small life. I worked wherever I could. I never told anyone I was disowned. I just became someone who had no backup plan. Some days I worked until my hands hurt so much I couldn't close them properly. Some nights I came home so tired I fell asleep without eating. But strangely, those were the days I started changing, because pain makes you either break or build, and I chose to build. Slowly, I started learning things I never cared about before. How money actually works, how people build trust, how businesses grow from nothing. Not because I was dreaming big, but because I had nothing left to lose. And when you have nothing left to lose, fear stops controlling you. That's when I started moving differently, carefully, quietly, like someone who knew they were no longer allowed to fail. Months passed, then a year, then another, and life stopped feeling like survival. It started feeling like progress, small progress, but real. I got better work, then better opportunities. Then people started trusting me with things I never imagined I would handle. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was becoming someone again. But even then, there was one thing I never did. I never called home. Not because I forgot, not because I didn't care, but because I needed to know something deeper. If I stopped existing in their lives completely, would anything change? Would anyone notice? Would anyone regret it? 3 years passed like that. 3 years of silence from both sides. 3 years of building a life they never saw. And then one night, everything broke that silence in a way I never expected. My phone rang, and I almost didn't answer it, because the number looked familiar in a way that made my chest tighten instantly. I stared at it for a few seconds. Then finally, I picked up. And for a moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear breathing on the other side, shaky, uneven, uncertain. Then a voice I had not heard in years spoke. My mother. But not the same voice I remembered. It was weaker, heavier, like something had worn it down completely. And she said something I never thought I would hear in my life. We need your help. Those words didn't feel real. I sat up slowly, trying to process them. Because the same woman who once told me I didn't belong in her house was now saying she needed me. I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence stretch, because I needed her to feel it too. Then I finally spoke. Why me? There was another pause, a longer one this time. And then she said something that made my stomach tighten. Because only you can fix this. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just a problem. This was something they had tried to handle and failed. Something serious enough to bring me back. Something they couldn't solve without the person they once threw away. I leaned back slowly. My heart wasn't racing. My emotions weren't exploding. It was something colder, clearer, because I realized something important in that moment. This wasn't just a phone call. This was a turning point. And I finally asked the question that had been sitting inside me for 3 years. Where is Dad? There was a long silence on the other side, long enough for me to know the answer was not simple. And then my mother said something that made everything inside me go still. Your father. He's not answering anyone. We think something is wrong. And just like that, the past I buried for 3 years suddenly started breathing again. But this time, I wasn't the same person who walked out that door. And whatever they needed from me was not going to be simple anymore. I didn't sleep that night, not because I was worried, but because my mind refused to settle. Those words kept repeating in my head again and again. We need your help. The same words that should have felt warm, felt strange instead. Because help is not something you ask from someone you erased. It doesn't work like that. And yet, there I was, staring at my ceiling, wondering what kind of situation could break a family that once believed I was the problem. By morning, I had already made a decision. I would go. Not because I forgave them, not because I forgot what they did, but because I needed to see it with my own eyes. What was strong enough to bring me back into a family that threw me away without hesitation? I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I just left. The road back to my hometown felt different this time. Same streets, same buildings, but nothing felt familiar anymore. It was like the place remembered me, but didn't recognize me. When I reached the house, I stopped for a moment outside. The same gate, the same color walls, but something was off. The silence around the house felt heavier than before. No laughter inside, no movement, just stillness. I raised my hand and knocked. Once, twice. Then the door opened slowly, and my mother stood there. For a moment, neither of us spoke. She looked at me like she was seeing a ghost. Not because I looked different, but because I was supposed to be gone from her world. Her lips moved slightly before any sound came out. You came. It wasn't a question. It was disbelief. I didn't answer. I just walked inside. The house felt smaller, or maybe I had just outgrown it. Every corner held memories I had spent years trying to forget. But the moment I stepped into the living room, I saw something I wasn't prepared for. My father wasn't there. Not sitting, not reading, not pretending like nothing mattered. The chair he always used was empty, and that emptiness felt wrong. My mother followed my gaze, and then she said it again, this time more carefully. Your father hasn't been the same for weeks. I stayed quiet because I didn't know what she expected me to say. That I was sorry, that I missed him, that I still cared. She continued, her voice shaking slightly. He stopped going to work. He stopped answering calls. He just shut everything down. My brother tried to handle things, but she stopped mid-sentence, like she didn't want to finish it. I finally spoke. Where is he? She looked down, then said something that made the room feel colder. Hospital. That one word changed the air instantly, but I didn't react immediately, because part of me didn't want to. Not because I wished him harm, but because I remembered every moment he told me I didn't matter, every time he chose silence over me, every time he made me feel like I was replaceable. And now, the same silence was happening to him. My mother's voice broke into my thoughts. We didn't know who else to call. Your brother said you might not come. She looked at me again, but I insisted, because only you know how he thinks, how he reacts. She paused. Only you understand him. That sentence hit differently, because for years, I was the one they didn't want to understand. And now, suddenly, I was the only one who could. I exhaled slowly. Tell me everything. And that's when she finally broke. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like someone who had been holding everything inside for too long. She explained that things had started falling apart months ago. Business issues, bad decisions, trust problems, and something she refused to explain clearly. Every time I asked a question, she avoided my eyes, like there was something worse underneath everything she was saying, something she didn't want me to see yet. But one thing was clear. Whatever my father had built, it was collapsing, and no one knew how to stop it. Not my brother, not the managers, not anyone. Only one name kept coming up again and again in her explanation. Mine. And that's when I finally understood why I was really called. I wasn't invited back because they missed me. I wasn't needed because they cared. I was needed because I had become the only option left, the only person who might be able to fix what everyone else failed to handle. And strangely, that realization didn't hurt as much as I thought it would. It just made everything clearer. I stood up slowly. Take me to him. My mother hesitated. Are you sure? I didn't answer, because I didn't need to. We left the house together. The drive to the hospital was silent. No one spoke. Every passing minute felt heavier than the last. And in that silence, I kept thinking about the last conversation I had with my father years ago. His voice, his decision, his certainty. If you leave, don't come back. And now here I was, coming back anyway, but not as the person who left. Something had changed. I had changed. We reached the hospital, and the moment we stepped inside, I felt it immediately. The tension, the rushed footsteps, the quiet panic hidden behind controlled faces. My brother was already there, standing near the reception. When he saw me, he froze. Not happy, not emotional, just surprised, like he wasn't sure I was real. He walked closer slowly. You came. I looked at him. No smile, no greeting, just a simple question. Where is he? He hesitated, then pointed down the corridor. Room 9. That was all. I walked past him without another word. Each step down that hallway felt heavier, not because I was scared, but because I knew I was about to see something I wasn't ready for. At the door of room 9, I stopped. My hand hovered over the handle. For a moment, I almost didn't open it, because whatever was behind that door was going to change everything again. And this time, there was no walking away. My hand stayed on the door handle longer than I expected. It felt heavier than it should. Like the moment I opened it, something irreversible would happen. Not outside in the world, but inside me. I took a slow breath. Then I pushed the door open. The room was quiet. Too quiet. Machines were softly beeping in the background. White walls, cold light, and in the middle of it all, a bed that didn't look like the one I remembered from home. And there he was. My father. But not the version I carried in my memory. Not the strong man who never backed down. Not the voice that used to fill the house with authority. This man looked smaller, still, tired in a way I had never seen before. For a moment, I couldn't move. Not because I was afraid, but because my mind was trying to match two images that refused to fit together. The man who once said I didn't belong, and the man lying helpless in front of me. My mother stayed behind me. My brother stopped at the doorway. No one spoke. Not immediately. Then my father turned his head slightly, and his eyes met mine. That was the moment everything paused. Even the sound of the machines felt distant. For a few seconds, he just looked at me, like he wasn't sure I was real. Then his lips moved slowly. My name. Just my name. Not as a command, not as a judgment, just recognition. And something inside me cracked. Not loudly, not dramatically, but deep enough that I had to look away for a second. Because I didn't expect that tone. I didn't expect him to sound like that. Weak, almost relieved. I stepped closer, carefully, like I was entering a place I wasn't fully allowed to be in. My father tried to sit up slightly, but failed. My mother quickly moved forward. No, don't strain yourself. He ignored her. His eyes stayed on me, long, unbroken. And then he said something that I was not prepared for. I thought you wouldn't come. That sentence stayed in the air longer than it should have. I didn't respond immediately, because I didn't know what answer he expected. I came because you needed me, or I came because I wanted to see this myself, or maybe something else entirely. But none of those words came out. Instead, I asked the only thing I could. What happened? My brother shifted behind me. My mother lowered her eyes. But my father, he didn't look away. And for the first time, I noticed something different in him. Guilt. Not spoken, not admitted, but there, He took a slow breath and began talking. Business first, always business. That was how he lived. That was how he controlled everything. But now, it didn't sound controlled anymore. It sounded broken. He explained in fragments. Bad decisions. A partner he trusted too much. A deal that went wrong. Money disappearing faster than expected. Pressure building. And then silence from people who once called him constantly. He stopped for a moment, then added something quieter. I thought I could fix it before anyone noticed. My brother suddenly spoke from the door. But it didn't work. His voice was sharp, defensive, like he was trying to protect something. We tried everything. My father raised his hand slightly, not to stop him, but to calm him. And then, he said the sentence that changed the tone of everything. I didn't want you involved. He looked at me when he said it. I felt that line land heavily, because it meant something deeper was coming. I took a step closer, then another. Why? Silence. My father looked down for the first time, and when he spoke again, his voice was lower. Because I thought you were already free. That sentence didn't make sense at first, but I didn't interrupt. He continued slowly. When you left, I thought you were finally out of all this, out of the business, out of the pressure, out of the cycle. My mother's eyes filled slightly. My brother looked away, and I stood there, trying to understand what he was actually saying. Then he said it. The truth he had avoided since I walked in. I didn't call you back because I needed you. I called you back because I had no one else. And for the first time since I entered that room, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not sadness, something colder, clearer. Because suddenly, everything made sense in a way I didn't want it to. I wasn't chosen because I was special. I was chosen because I was the last option, the emergency plan, the one person they could still reach. I looked at him for a long moment, and then I asked the question I didn't want to ask. What exactly did you lose? My father hesitated, long enough for me to notice. Then he finally said it, almost in a whisper. Everything. The word didn't feel real, but the silence after it did. My brother finally stepped forward. It's worse than that. He said it quickly, too quickly, like he had been holding it in too long. We're not just losing money, we're losing control. I turned slightly toward him. What does that mean? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at my father, as if waiting for permission. My father closed his eyes for a moment, then nodded slightly, and my brother said the next sentence slowly, carefully. Someone is targeting us. That's when the room changed again. The atmosphere shifted, not emotionally this time, strategically, because suddenly, this wasn't just a family crisis. It was something bigger, something planned, something intentional. My mother finally spoke again, her voice shaking. And they asked for you specifically. I turned back toward her. Me? She nodded. Because you're the only one who ever understood how the system works. That sentence stayed with me longer than anything else, because it meant one thing. This wasn't random. This wasn't desperation. This was calculated. Someone knew exactly who I was, and exactly what role I used to play. I looked at my father again, and for the first time, I wasn't looking at a parent. I was looking at a man who once controlled everything and was now losing it piece by piece. And somehow, my name was part of the solution, but also part of something much bigger I had not seen yet. I stepped back slowly, because I realized something important. Coming here wasn't just about family. It was about a situation I had unknowingly been connected to all along. And whatever came next, would not be simple. Not for them, not for me, and definitely not for the people who thought I could fix it. I turned toward the door, and for a second, nobody stopped me, because they all knew the same thing. I wasn't the same person who walked out 3 years ago, and I wasn't going to solve this like before. I didn't leave the hospital right away, even though part of me wanted to, even though everything inside me was telling me I shouldn't be there. I stood outside the room for a long moment, just staring at the closed door, because what I heard inside was not just a family problem anymore. It was something deeper, something structured, something planned. Someone was targeting them. That line kept repeating in my mind, not like a warning, like a pattern. And patterns are never random. They are designed. I finally started walking down the corridor, slow steps, heavy thoughts. My mother followed behind me silently for a while, but I didn't turn around. I already knew what she wanted: answers, help, control. But I had none of those yet. I needed clarity first. Outside the hospital, the air felt different, colder, more real. My brother came out a few minutes later. He didn't speak at first, just stood beside me like he wasn't sure how to behave around me anymore. Not as a brother, not as an enemy, just uncertain. Finally, he said it. "We should talk somewhere private." I didn't answer immediately, but I followed. We ended up in a small cafe nearby, the kind of place people go when they don't want to be noticed. We sat at a corner table. No one ordered anything at first. Silence filled the space between us. Then I finally spoke. "Start from the beginning." My brother exhaled like he had been waiting for that command. And then he began. Not emotional, not dramatic, just factual. At first, he explained how the company started losing ground months ago. Small losses, strange delays, clients pulling out without explanation, contracts disappearing. He thought it was competition, normal business pressure. But then it escalated, too fast, too clean, like someone was always one step ahead. He paused, then looked at me, and said something that made my attention sharpen instantly. We checked everything: internal leaks, external competitors, financial records. Nothing made sense. I leaned forward slightly, because that phrase matters in business more than anything else. Nothing makes sense usually means someone is hiding the logic. I asked him, "When did it start?" He didn't hesitate this time. "The day you left." That hit differently. I leaned back slowly, not because I was emotional, but because I was connecting something I didn't want to connect. My brother noticed my expression and quickly added, "But we didn't link it to you at first, until recently." I looked at him. "Recently how?" He lowered his voice slightly. "Because of the emails." I stayed still. "What emails?" He reached into his bag and placed his phone on the table. He opened a folder, scrolled, then turned the screen toward me. There were messages, short ones, direct ones, but structured, professional, not emotional, not random. They weren't threats. They were instructions, systematic pressure, financial predictions, warnings about timing. It wasn't someone angry. It was someone organized. I studied them carefully. Then I asked the question that mattered most. Who sent them? My brother hesitated again. And for the first time since I saw him, he looked uncomfortable. "We don't know." I frowned slightly. Everyone always knows something, even when they say they don't. I pointed at the phone. "This is not random." He nodded quickly. "I know." I waited, and then he said it. "We think it's someone who used to work with us." That's when the conversation shifted again. I leaned back, because now we were entering a different category: internal knowledge, insider access, someone who knew the structure from inside. I asked. Former employee. He shook his head. Not just employee, someone who knew everything. Business model, contracts, family structure, everything. My mind immediately started analyzing possibilities. But before I could respond, he added something else. And they mentioned your name. That stopped me. Completely. I looked at him directly. My name? He nodded. Not as a threat. Not as blame. More like relevance. They said the only reason the system works against us is because you are not part of it anymore. I stayed silent because I didn't understand that logic yet. He continued. It's like they studied how you used to work here, how you made decisions, how you handled negotiations. Then they built the entire attack structure around your absence. That sentence created a strange feeling inside me. Not fear, not anger, something closer to recognition, like someone had built a puzzle using my missing piece. I asked slowly. So you're saying, I'm part of the reason this is happening? My brother quickly shook his head. No, not like that. He paused, then corrected himself. You're part of the solution, but also part of what they're exploiting. I stared at him. That statement didn't make full sense yet, but I could feel the direction it was pointing. There was a silence between us. Then I asked the question I had been avoiding since the hospital. Why me? My brother didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked down. Because Father didn't trust anyone else with this level of access. And before I could respond, he added something lower. He trusted you more than he ever admitted. That sentence hit differently, because I remembered something. My father never praised directly, never openly, but he used to give me responsibility in silence. Small things at first, then bigger decisions. Not because he said it, but because he allowed it. And now I realized, even after everything that happened between us, that trust had never fully disappeared. My brother slid the phone back. We need to decide something. I looked at him. Decide what? He leaned forward slightly. Are you going to help us fix this? The question wasn't simple. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't about family anymore. It was about choice. I looked out the window for a moment. People were walking outside, living normal lives. No idea what kind of storm was sitting quietly at this table. Then I spoke. Not quickly, not emotionally. Calm. I need to understand everything first. My brother nodded. That's fair. But then he added something softer. We don't have much time. That line changed the atmosphere again, because urgency means collapse is close. I stood up slowly. I'm going back. He looked surprised. To the hospital? I nodded. I need to hear everything from him directly, before I make any decision. And I walked out. But this time, I wasn't just going back as a son. I was going back as someone trying to understand a system that was already in motion. And the moment I re-entered that hospital, I knew one thing clearly. This wasn't about forgiveness. It wasn't even about family. It was about control. And somewhere in this entire situation, someone had already started playing a game I hadn't fully seen yet. But I was about to. When I walked back into the hospital, the atmosphere felt different. Not the place, but me. Because now I wasn't walking in as someone confused. I was walking in as someone who finally understood there was more hidden beneath the surface. More than illness. More than business collapse. More than family tension. Something was being managed behind the scenes, and I needed to see it from the source. Room 9 was still the same. Quiet, controlled. Machines softly beeping like nothing in the world was wrong. But when I stepped inside, my father looked at me differently this time. Not surprised, not emotional. More like he was expecting this moment. My mother stood near the window. My brother stayed slightly behind me this time. And I realized something important. The room had started to divide into sides without anyone saying a word. I moved closer to the bed. My father followed me with his eyes. I didn't sit. Not yet. I wanted answers first. Real answers. Not half-truths. Not filtered explanations. I spoke calmly. Start from the beginning. No gaps. My father didn't argue. That alone told me how serious things had become. He took a slow breath. And this time, he didn't talk like a businessman. He talked like someone who had finally stopped pretending. It started with a partner. That was the first sentence. Simple, but heavy. A man I trusted for years. My father paused, then continued. He knew everything about the company, more than he should have. I watched his expression carefully, because this wasn't just financial loss. This was betrayal territory. He closed his eyes for a moment. We built everything together, and then, slowly, things started changing. My father opened his eyes again and said something that shifted the entire tone. He didn't want money. He wanted control. That sentence made me focus fully. Because money problems can be solved. Control problems are different. They spread. They infect systems. My father continued. At first, I didn't notice anything unusual. Small delays, strange approvals, contracts being delayed without reason. Then clients started pulling back. Not one or two. Multiple. Too coordinated to be coincidence. I stayed silent, because I was already connecting patterns in my mind. My brother stepped forward slightly. We thought it was competition at first, but then we realized something. He stopped, looked at my father, and my father nodded for him to continue. My brother exhaled. It wasn't competition. It was internal access. That sentence landed hard, because internal access means someone inside the system, someone who knows everything. I finally spoke. Who had that level of access? My father answered this time. 3 people. That was it. He didn't elaborate immediately, then added slowly. My financial advisor, my operations manager, and you. The room went quiet, not emotionally, but structurally, because my name was suddenly part of the equation again. I frowned slightly. I don't have access anymore. My father nodded. I know. And that's why it started collapsing after you left. There it was again. The same connection. My absence. Linked to instability. I leaned closer. So you're saying someone is using my former position? My father hesitated, then shook his head slightly. Not just using it. Rebuilding it. That sentence changed everything again. Because rebuilding means imitation, replication, strategy copying. Someone had studied how I worked inside the system and recreated it against them. I took a slow breath and asked the question that mattered most. Who is it? My father didn't answer immediately, and that silence told me more than words. My brother finally spoke. We don't know the name, but we know the pattern. I looked at him. What pattern? He hesitated, then said it. Every move they make feels like you. That line didn't make sense at first, so I stayed quiet and let him continue. The timing, the structure, the pressure points, the way they predict decisions before we make them. It's like someone studied how you think. The room felt colder after that, because that wasn't just business anymore. That was personal replication. My father spoke again. That's why I called you, because whoever is doing this understands you better than we do. That sentence hit differently, not because it was flattering, but because it was unsettling. Someone had studied my thinking patterns, my decisions, my strategies, and then turned them into a weapon. I stepped back slightly, trying to process it logically. But another thought came immediately. If someone can predict me, then they either worked closely with me or watched me for a long time. My brother added quietly, or learned from your absence. That made me pause. Because absence creates gaps, and gaps get filled. I asked slowly. And you think I can stop it? My father looked directly at me for the first time since I entered. Not as a son, but as the only remaining option. Yes. The answer was immediate. No hesitation. No doubt. Just certainty. And for the first time, I felt the weight of responsibility shift completely. Because this wasn't about helping anymore. This was about being the missing piece in a system someone else was already controlling. I looked at all of them. My mother's eyes were tired. My brother looked stressed. My father looked defeated. And in that moment, I realized something important. They didn't just need help. They had already lost control. And I was standing in the middle of a situation that had been running without me for months, maybe even longer. I turned toward the door again. But before I left, my father spoke one last time, his voice quieter now. There's something else you don't know yet. I stopped, didn't turn around, but listened. He continued. The person doing this didn't start recently. They've been preparing for years. That sentence made everything heavier. Years, not months, not weeks. Years. I slowly turned back. Then why now? My father looked down. Because now, they're ready. And we're not. Silence followed. Not dramatic, not emotional, just final. I stepped out of the room again. But this time, I wasn't walking into confusion. I was walking into a strategy war I didn't fully see yet. And for the first time since this all began, I understood the real situation. This wasn't about family anymore. It wasn't even about business. It was about someone who had been preparing a long game and finally decided it was time to end it. And somehow, I was already inside it. I didn't go back into the room immediately. Instead, I stood outside room 9 for a long time. People walked past me in the hallway. Doctors, nurses, families. Life continued normally around me. But inside my mind, everything was running in the opposite direction. Because now the situation had changed shape again. It wasn't just someone is attacking us. It wasn't even someone studied your patterns. Now it was something far more dangerous. Years of preparation. That means intention. That means patience. That means someone didn't act out of anger. They acted out of design. And design like that always has a face behind it. I finally walked out of the hospital, not to escape, but to think clearly. My brother was waiting outside. He didn't say anything at first, just watched me, like he was trying to understand what I was becoming in his eyes. Finally, he spoke. You believe it now, don't you? I didn't answer immediately, because belief wasn't the issue anymore. Understanding was. I nodded slightly. I believe there is someone targeting us. He exhaled. Good. Then he added, because we found something else. That line immediately pulled my attention. What? He looked around first, then stepped closer, and lowered his voice. Bank records, internal access logs, communication traces. He paused, and then said the part he clearly didn't want to say out loud. They all point to someone who had access to your old system credentials. That made me stop. I looked at him directly. My old credentials were supposed to be disabled years ago. They weren't just passwords. They were layered access permissions, multiple verification levels. If someone had used them, it meant one of two things. Either the system was breached, or someone inside restored them. I asked him slowly, who had access to those records? He hesitated, then answered. Only 3 people, and I already knew the answer before he said it. My father, my brother, and the former internal strategist who worked directly under me. That last part made me focus, because I remembered him vaguely, not close, not personal, but efficient, always quiet, always observing. My brother continued. We tried to trace him, but he disappeared from the system after you left. No financial records, no address updates, no activity. It's like he was erased. That sentence hit differently. Because people don't just disappear from systems like that, not without intention. I asked. His name? My brother hesitated. And that hesitation told me everything. Because if the name was normal, he would have said it immediately. Finally, he spoke. Arman Qureshi. The moment that name left his mouth, something inside me shifted. Not fear, not shock, recognition. Faint, but real. Because I had heard that name before. Not often, not loudly, but in passing conversations during strategy meetings. Someone my father once called promising but too observant. My brother watched my reaction closely. You know him? I shook my head slightly. Not directly, but I remember him. That was true, but not complete. Because I also remembered something else. He was always in the room, without speaking, listening more than talking, analyzing more than contributing, the kind of person you forget, until something goes wrong. My brother continued. We think he's the one coordinating everything. I looked at him. Based on what? He pulled out his phone again, showed me another set of logs. This time, it wasn't just financial movement. It was timing patterns. Every major loss in our company happened within hours of your old system strategies being referenced externally. That sentence made my mind slow down. Because that wasn't random. That was replication timing. Someone wasn't just attacking. They were mirroring, using internal logic against them. I took a slow breath and asked the most important question. Why would he do this? My brother didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked away, then said quietly, because he was removed after you left. That made me pause. Removed? He nodded. Not officially fired, but pushed out of decision-making completely. My father didn't trust him without your supervision. And after you left, everything changed. That was the first real emotional crack I felt in this entire story. Because now the pattern was forming clearly. There was a system. There was a strategist. There was me. And when I left, the structure broke in ways no one anticipated. And someone inside didn't forget. My brother added softly. He blamed your father, not you. That detail mattered, because resentment directed upward is more dangerous than resentment directed sideways. I stayed silent for a moment, then asked, Where is he now? My brother shook his head. We don't know. But we think he's been building something quietly, something outside our visibility. That sentence felt like a warning, because invisible growth is the most dangerous kind. I leaned back slightly, trying to map everything mentally, but something still didn't sit right. If he was truly behind this, then why involve me indirectly? Why leave traces connected to my thinking patterns? Why make it obvious enough that I could detect it? That didn't feel like revenge. That felt like invitation. I said it out loud. This doesn't feel like an attack. My brother frowned. What do you mean? I looked at him directly. If someone wanted to destroy us, they wouldn't leave patterns for us to follow. They would erase everything. He went quiet, because he knew I was right. I continued. This feels like something else, my brother asked. Like what? I paused, then said the word carefully. Testing. That changed his expression immediately. Testing what? I looked back toward the hospital building, like he wants me to respond. Silence followed. Heavy, uncomfortable. Because now a new possibility entered the conversation. What if this wasn't just revenge? What if this was a structured confrontation, a controlled escalation, a system designed not just to destroy, but to force a reaction from someone specific? Me. My brother broke the silence. So what do we do? I didn't answer immediately, because for the first time, I didn't feel like I was stepping into a rescue mission. I felt like I was stepping into a game already in progress, and I had just been officially invited. Finally, I spoke. We stopped reacting. He frowned. Then what? I looked at him. We start understanding the system first, because whoever Armin Qureshi is, he didn't just come back into our lives. He designed his way back in. And that means one thing. This isn't about fixing damage anymore. It's about predicting the next move. And for the first time since this entire situation began, I stopped feeling like I was catching up and started feeling like I was entering something I was meant to enter, but not as a victim, not as a son, as someone who might actually be the only person capable of matching him. And somewhere far away, I couldn't shake the feeling that Armin Qureshi already knew I had started thinking this way. After leaving the hospital, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had already started moving again. Not around us, but against us. It wasn't loud, it wasn't visible, but it was structured, like someone had already planned the next step, and we were only now realizing we were inside it. My brother kept talking as we walked back toward the parking area, but I wasn't fully listening anymore, because my mind was stuck on one thing. Armin Qureshi. That name wasn't random anymore. It was the center of everything we had just uncovered. And the more I thought about it, the more it felt familiar in a way I couldn't fully explain. Not emotionally, not personally, but strategically. Like I had once seen the way he thinks, without realizing I was studying it. My brother suddenly stopped walking. We should sit somewhere and plan this properly. I nodded. This time I agreed immediately, because now silence wasn't useful anymore. We needed structure. We went back to the same cafe, but this time it didn't feel like a conversation place. It felt like a planning room. My brother placed a folder on the table. Printed documents, screenshots, financial graphs, and something else, a timeline. He pushed it toward me. We mapped everything we could find, every loss, every delay, every system failure. I looked at it carefully, and the pattern became obvious within minutes. It wasn't chaos. It was sequencing. One event triggered another. Each loss was not random. It was timed, precise. Like steps in a chain reaction. I pointed at one section. This happened 2 months ago? My brother nodded. Same week your father's health started declining. I looked up slowly. You're saying that's connected? He didn't answer immediately, then said carefully, we don't know yet, but the timing is too consistent to ignore. I leaned back slightly, because timing is not evidence, but it is direction. And direction tells you where to look. I looked at the next set of data, another failure, another disruption, then another, and every single one matched moments when my old strategies would have been useful if I had been there. That thought stayed in my mind longer than I expected. I finally spoke. Someone is not just attacking the company. They are reacting to decisions I would have made. My brother frowned. Meaning? I pointed at the document. Look at this pattern. They don't just block us. They force us into weaker alternatives. Almost like they know what our strongest move would have been, and then remove it before we reach it. My brother went quiet, because now he saw it too. This wasn't random sabotage. This was predictive blocking. Someone was playing against possible outcomes, not just actual decisions. I closed the folder slowly and said it clearly. This is not a normal competitor. My brother leaned forward. Then what is it? I paused, then answered. Someone who knows how I think. A silence followed. He finally asked, could it be him? Arman Qureshi. I didn't answer immediately because I didn't want to rush into certainty, but everything kept pointing back to him. Finally, I said, maybe, but there's something missing. My brother frowned. What? I tapped the table lightly. If he really studied me this deeply, then he wouldn't just be destroying us. He would be testing me. That word again. Testing. It felt more real every time I said it. My brother leaned back. So what do we do now? I looked at the folder again, then said something simple. We stop reacting to damage and start predicting intention. He nodded slowly, but before he could respond, his phone vibrated. He looked at it. His expression changed immediately. What? He turned the screen toward me. Unknown number. One message. Short. Only one line. And when I read it, everything inside me paused for a second. It said, you are looking in the right direction, but not deep enough. I stared at it, then looked at my brother. Who sent this? He shook his head quickly. I don't know. I felt something cold form in my chest, because this wasn't just surveillance. This was awareness. Someone was actively watching our thinking process, not just our actions, our understanding. Before I could respond, another message came. Same number, same tone. This time, longer. You are rebuilding the pattern correctly, but you are still assuming this started after your departure. My brother's grip tightened on his phone. I read it again, slowly, and then the final line appeared. And that is your first mistake. I slowly leaned back in my chair, because now the situation had shifted again. Not financially, not emotionally, intellectually. Someone was not just attacking us, they were correcting us, teaching us, or guiding us towards something. My brother whispered, is this a threat? I shook my head slowly. No, this doesn't feel like a threat. He frowned. Then what? I looked at the message again, then answered carefully. It feels like someone wants us to understand something, but only step by step. My brother went quiet, because now the fear wasn't confusion anymore. It was control. Someone else was controlling the pace of our understanding, and that meant one thing. They were always ahead. I stood up slowly. We're going back. He looked up. Where? I looked at him. Hospital. My brother frowned. Why? Because now I need to hear everything my father didn't say the first time. And more importantly, I need to see what else he's been hiding. I started walking out. But inside me, a new thought had already formed. If Arman Qureshi was really behind this, then he wasn't just attacking my family. He was reconstructing a past I was never fully told about. And I had a feeling the next truth wouldn't come from data. It would come from confession. When I stepped back into the hospital this time, I already knew something had changed. Not outside, inside the story. Because now it wasn't just about fixing a crisis. It was about uncovering a truth that had been buried for years. And I could feel it. Like the closer I got to it, the more the system resisted being understood. My brother stayed behind. My mother was in the waiting area. But I walked straight to room 9 alone. This time, no hesitation. I opened the door. My father was awake. And the moment he saw me, I noticed something different in his eyes. Not confusion, not relief. Fear. Not of me, but of what I might figure out. I pulled a chair closer and sat down. No greetings. No emotion. Just one question. Tell me everything you never told me. The room went silent. Even the machines felt quieter. My father slowly turned his head toward the window, then spoke. Not immediately, like he was choosing which truth would destroy the least amount of damage. There are things you were never supposed to be involved in. I didn't react, because I had heard that before. But this time, it felt different, more final. I leaned forward slightly. You already said that once. He closed his eyes for a moment, then continued. Before you left, there was something happening inside the company, something I didn't control anymore. I watched him carefully, and then he said it. Armin wasn't just an employee. That name hit the room again like a warning. My father continued. He was building systems inside our system, quietly, slowly, better than anyone noticed. My brother didn't understand it. But you did. That sentence made me stop, because now the direction was shifting again. My father looked at me. You used to challenge him. You used to question his logic. I stayed silent, because I remembered. Not clearly, but enough. Armin was never loud, but he was always precise. My father exhaled slowly. I made a decision. I removed him from your projects. That sentence changed everything. I looked at him. You removed him? He nodded. Because I thought he was becoming a risk, and I didn't want him influencing your decisions. Silence followed. Heavy. Because now a hidden layer was forming. My father wasn't just managing business. He was controlling interactions, blocking certain people from reaching me. I leaned back slightly. So what happened? My father finally looked directly at me and said something that changed the entire story. He didn't leave quietly. We forced him out. That line landed deeper than anything before. I asked, why? My father hesitated, then answered, because he started questioning ownership structures, control structures. And he asked one question I couldn't answer. That made me focus. What question? My father looked down, then said it. What happens when the system no longer belongs to the people who built it? The room went still, because that wasn't a normal question. That was philosophy mixed with threat analysis. My father continued. After that, I removed him completely. From systems, from access, from influence, and I made sure he couldn't return. I stared at him, slowly understanding the weight of what I was hearing. And then I asked the question that mattered most. And you think he came back for revenge? My father didn't answer immediately, then said quietly, I think he came back to finish what he started. Silence again. But this time it felt final. I stood up slowly, because everything now aligned. Armin wasn't random. He wasn't emotional. He wasn't even reactive. He was continuing a structure he had already begun years ago. And everything after my departure was just acceleration. I turned toward the door, but my father spoke again. Last thing. I stopped, without turning back. He said it carefully. He never hated you. That made me pause. Slowly I turned. Then who did he hate? My father looked at me. Me. And that was it. The final piece. Because suddenly everything made sense. Not fully, but enough. Armin wasn't just attacking a company. He wasn't just targeting systems. He was correcting a hierarchy. And I had been part of that hierarchy without realizing it. I walked out of the room slowly, And this time, I didn't feel confused. I felt something far more dangerous. Clarity. Because now I understood the shape of the game, and I understood my position in it. I was not the target. I was not the victim. I was the missing variable. The one thing the system didn't account for when it started collapsing. And somewhere far away, I had a feeling Arman Qureshi already knew I had finally understood that. Because as I stepped outside the hospital, my phone buzzed one more time. Unknown number. One final message. And it said only this: now we can begin properly.